Hello, everyone, and welcome to International Women's Day. We have four amazing panelists today that I am so blessed to be able to have to join me, that represents a generation that needs to have their voices heard. On International Women's Day, what are the issues that are happening around the world? There's so many issues that actually sometimes can be really disheartening because it's definitely not the world that I thought it was going to be, having raised four daughters. And so I wanted to provide an opportunity. We wanted to, National Geographic and Inspires wanted to provide an opportunity for this generation to be able to use their voices in a way that would be impactful and that will also be inspiring to their generation, to even generations like me and even younger. And so, to no further ado, I would love to introduce all of you to these wonderful, amazing young women. Samira Johnson, she is currently a student, a listener, an optimist, a daughter, a leader, a health advocate. She's reflective, and she's a global citizen in a perfect world. And she was a youth council advisor working with Manuela Testolini. Hajar is a podcaster. She's Muslim, friendly, curious, enthusiastic, oldest daughter, a leader, and kind. And I'd like to welcome Hajar, a member of Mu Delta Alpha. Harir, she is a proud Muslim, a family-driven, a calm storm, I love that, a true empath, resilient human rights activist in exile, refugee, a rising leader of Afghanistan, doing quality work with conscious moral compass, ambitious knowledge seeker. Was recommended to come to this program by Jamila Afghani, who is an amazing activist who has spoken to the rights of girls in Afghanistan. And so I just want to thank you for Harir. Pinky is a leader, courageous, persistent, a friend, a dreamer, confident, fortunate, and an explorer. Graduate of Paradada Paradi, and I actually have gone there before, an amazing school, but I know Pinky will talk more about that. So I wanted to make sure I give credit to all of these amazing, their mentors that have actually brought them here. Kick off our conversation today on International Women's Day to really talk about the issues that exist today. There's so many things that are prevalent, sort of like I said before, that can be disheartening. In the US, there are issues, there are so many rights that are being rolled back with regard to the right to our bodies, and wherever you sort of like place your mindset on that. But there's also issues, of course, you go to Iran, you go to Afghanistan, where the rights of girls and women with regard to education are literally being stripped away, and not to even mention the lives that have been lost. So there are a lot of topics that I want to be able to cover today. And I want you, the four of you guys, to know that this is a platform where I want you to be able to speak your voice. And I hope that in being able to speak your voice on this platform, that you are inspired to speak your voice loudly in other spaces as well. Because when you do that, you will inspire others to do the same. So my first question would be, or sort of start off our conversation is, what issue is in your heart, as heavy on your heart, that's prevalent, that you really would like to speak about, that you really think that we need to sort of have a more clear understanding of, that we need to do something about it? Is there anyone that would like to sort of start the conversation?
From the rural part of India, and where like people think that women are not as equal as men, because they think like women they can't do anything. And as I tell about my society, that they think that girls, like, they shouldn't be getting education, they don't deserve education. So what is happening in my society, they just prefer to educate boys, like only to the male. They, whatever the opportunities are being delivered in the society, it's just for women, like it's just for men, it's not for women. So Pardada Pardadi is the school and society which is working towards all those stereotypes and problems which are happening to girls. And I'm also one of them who was in the same condition, but I got lucky that I could get admission in Pardada Pardadi. And that's one more thing, that people that like they are not educated enough so they can understand their fundamental rights and they can speak about it. So education is the most I would say the bad problem in there, that they don't know anything and they are not aware of their fundamental rights. So if they don't know about it, they would not say anything about it.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, fundamental rights. Great point, Pinky. You basically said if the girls in whatever region of the world aren't aware of their rights, then they can't exercise their rights at all. So education and being able, just like what you're doing right now, using your voices to tell them like, look, you have rights, even if you don't realize it. So yeah, that's so true. Thank you so much, Pinky.
I am part of Mu Delta Alpha, and one of the things that we did is creating the first Muslim sorority in Texas. And a sorority is for women, and then creating one that's just more catered towards Muslim women, because there aren't really a lot of spaces for Muslim women, that they're not properly represented. And sometimes the sororities, like the other sororities that they could have possibly joined, don't really align with their values, or they don't really necessarily push them towards kind of academics, or they don't push them towards like more positive aspects of college, and they kind of push them towards like the partying and just like the other type of culture that is like surrounded by college. So Mu Delta Alpha was like a really important stepping stone in pushing women towards like leadership and like incorporating your religion within your college life, and just like a sisterhood. I think a sisterhood is a lot of things that like nowadays it's very like lacking in a lot of areas. Like women are always being put up against each other in competition, and then they're like, oh, like and they're also being belittled in leadership spaces. Like I know there's like so many instances of women like being like the only woman at like this board meeting, the only woman like that's an executive director, and even then being treated like they didn't earn or deserve their position.
Great points, Hajar. You're absolutely right. And I'm so glad you said that about the sisterhood, because in another generation, I see that as well in my generation, that we are sort of pitted against each other instead of actually coming together to uplift each other. So I'm so glad that your generation also sees the importance of a sisterhood, because it's so important. We need to be able to stand on the shoulders or to stand next to each other, like Jamila have said before, to be able to support each other. No matter where we are in the world, we need to sort of do that.
Passionate about health inequality and health education. I'm in my school of public health currently, and we just learn about just the inequities of that minorities face when it comes to healthcare and the system, and just also the lack of education that you get, starting from a young age, and that definitely revolves around your environment growing up, and what you have access to. And I know being in the US, there is still a lot of privilege there with the healthcare system, but it's the fact that our system is built off of more of a fixing and not necessarily a preventative, educated on how we can support ourselves, live a healthy lifestyle in order to prevent different health crises and issues further along down the line. And when you're not given those resources and that education early on, you're faced with a lot of issues that can complicate things for you. And it just contributes to the cycle. So I think I'm specifically more passionate about teaching others how we can, break down those boundaries and push for a more balanced and healthy lifestyle and environment for all.
Oh, yes. I love that. More preventative and not necessarily just sort of putting band-aids on everything. I love that concept too. Yes.
I definitely agree with that. And that kind of relates. I'm currently doing like a capstone research project on nutritional literacy. And this actually kind of inspired me like to add on to my research. Like you were saying about, you were discussing like preventative measures. And then my capstone project kind of relates to how the lack of nutritional literacy causes like health issues and disparities down the line.
Yeah, and it's put in place for a reason, especially in the US. Hospitals and things like that, they don't benefit if we are a healthy community. So it's frustrating that we're not taught simple nutritional basics, health basics early on, to then help us later.
Wow. Well, you guys, you're the generation that is going to inform, us as far as what we need to do and even more. And so just like Pinky was talking about, as far as education is key. So I'm so proud of you guys for, having this be something that's really important, that we need to be aware of. Is there anything that you would like to add, Tarir?
So I come from Afghanistan, and obviously there is a huge crisis inside of Afghanistan, but not only in Afghanistan. I've been noticing this trend like all over the world. Women are extremely like marginalized and like extremely like, taken advantage of and belittled in every capacity that they are. Taken away their rights, and like, women have to fight so hard for their basic fundamental rights that are given to men out of silver platter. And I just don't understand why that is, and I get to see that firsthand in Afghanistan, and I am actually a byproduct of that. Because currently I live in exile because of all of the security issues and all the constant, I guess, issues are rising with the militarized regime that is like in place in Afghanistan. I get to see what kind of impact that has had on the millions of girls' life inside of Afghanistan. And also we're seeing similar situation in Iran. And there's just like constantly so many crises. And like even in India, as was mentioned by Pinky, and I think it's in everywhere we go, even in the States, there's a lot of like issues, regardless of how developed or developing the state or nation is. There's always an issue that a woman has to try so much harder for something than a man does. And that is something that really infuriates me, because I don't understand where that comes from, where that sort of like, privilege comes from, the male privilege that we do talk about. And I really want to hope for a day or a generation where we don't have to worry about women trying to fight for equal payment, or women trying to fight for education, or women trying to fight for like access to good healthcare services. I'm just hoping that we can reach that point someday. Maybe not in our generation, but hopefully in the upcoming generation. And that's our goal.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you so much, Harir, for bringing up that point, because that's something that I discussed with the other panel before. Why is it there's such a concerted effort to suppress the voice of girls and women? Why is it that for some reason in this past, like I would say last 10 years, there's been a rollback of rights, a taking away of privileges? I don't understand why that's happening. It is very disheartening, and it actually is for me as well, Harir, infuriating that that's happening, because I didn't want the idea of our 4 daughters not being able to have even more rights than I do. I can't even like imagine that. And so with that point being made, what do you feel can be done that's not already been done? Because sometimes in life, people, they think it's rocket science to actually fix things or fix issues, but I know and I believe that all of you have an idea in your hearts, like if we could just do this, then things can get better. So do you guys have any sort of like hope or ideas that you would like to share, as far as if we can sort of change this in our society, wherever it is, that things could get better?
Just the initiative to like create something and persevere through like the things that people say to you. Like they'll tell you like, oh, you can't do this, why are you doing this? Like they'll push you down, they'll push you back, like they'll constantly like belittle you and tell you like, no, like why? Like they'll try to stop you in every form. But it's just like persevering, and whatever idea, whatever initiative, whatever program, organization you want to start, like pushing through, like not letting like people like make you feel like, oh, like I give up, like not letting yourself give up, and not letting people affect you to the point where you give up. I think that is the biggest thing. Like I know there's been so many, like I know like there's millions of people across the world who've like tried to start something, like millions of women, and then it like the pressure got to them and then they ended up giving up. But I think with those ideas they had, they could have created something amazing if they just persevered.
I think first of all, those that are in power should be held accountable for the kind of like policies that are in place. and when it comes to like, you know, providing services for women and men, I think that like some of the policies are very like gender you know, gender based, and like it's very much like, I guess, like who are making the policies, it's mostly men. So we have to like include women in those kind of like discussions at those kind of like levels. We have to hold men accountable when it comes to what kind of like rules and regulations they are bringing on women. I think education is so crucial, not only for us like at, you know, high schools or like colleges or university. I think like consistent like education even within like systems and like within, and each like leader holding themselves accountable and trying to understand the context of like the diverse populations that are within each society. It's very, very crucial, not only for women but also for like different marginalized groups. Like we have to be inclusive of all different variations of people and with their like backgrounds and everything. So I think like instead of like shunning away from diversity, we have to embrace the diversity that is there and try to find ways to like incorporate it within society. I think that's the best way a society can succeed. And just at the same time creating more opportunities for women by women and supporting those. So like a lot of like feminist organization, like the concept of sisterhood, that has to come at play, not just like verbally or just like theoretically, but actually like and be incorporated in like different ways as well. Like I love the concept that Hajar mentioned with the Muslim sorority. It's very unique. It's something that not many people would be like thinking about, but more initiatives like that, more opportunities like that, and more spaces like that. And also just like we have to like start fighting away with this narrative that women are inferior than men. We're not. It's like 21st century. Let's get over this narrative and let's just take, you know, accountability of our own like rights, and let's not let other people tell us what we can do and what we can't do and how much we can do and how much we can't do. I think that if we give them that chance, then they will, you know, mansplain or like kind of like tell us what we are capable of or how much we should like, you know, set the bar for ourselves.
I agree on, you know, not as a woman that wants to pursue like a male dominated field, I think it would be a hindrance to really look at the negatives and, you know, be like, I'm going to be the only woman in the room. It's going to be a lot of pressure. They're going to view me this way or think this or that. And I think just look at the positives and of being a woman. We hold so much power. There's so many women that have accomplished so much and we can learn from them. And I think just leaning on our strengths rather than our weaknesses, going into things really confidently, even if we don't feel it in the moment, you know, faking it and just recognizing the power that we hold in different rooms. And then like you guys both mentioned, just the power of sisterhood and also like asking for help, making connections with other women to see what they did to get where they wanted to be. And I think women that hold higher power positions also be willing to help others get to where you are and, you know, surpass you. You know, it should be a communal effort to strengthen women and where we are today in order to reach those higher level positions to make those decisions and enforce like our regulations.
Yeah.
What Pardadi was doing was like educating us. So that was the first solution that came into our mind, because we saw many people like they were not aware of anything. So if I take if I talk about my parents, like they live in that society and they don't know about girls, like whatever their ancestor used to say, they say the same thing. So for that thing we need to educate them. And I can see the difference between like after like 20 years when I was little, and I see, you know, like the mentality at that time, and I can see their mentality right now. They send their daughters to school, and whatever we were looking to the world, like, you know, what girls are doing, and I used to tell my parents everything whatever I was, you know, seeing in my college, like in my school, like what girls are doing nowadays. And they got inspired by it, and they changed their mentality based on, you know, knowing and getting aware of the society. So I think education made the big impact on society, and now I can see other girls like me, they are making their own decisions. Before that, you know, their family, their partner, their father, their brother, they were making decisions for them. They were not, you know, included in the decision that are being taken in their family. They don't include women. But now I can see my father, he always asks me, you know, or we are thinking about this thing, what do you think about it? So I feel so lucky that they are changing their mentality. So it takes time. Yeah, like I can see other people as well, like they are still same, but if they are like getting education, it can be changed. Like I can see that in my parents, like they changed. So I think everyone can also change based on the education and awareness in the society.
I always say that regardless of what age you are, your community that surrounds you is so crucial. That's so important because it actually can either fill you up and push you towards your purpose, or it could actually deplete you and sort of like, make you doubt yourself and who you are. And so that's my next question. I would love to get an understanding of where you are right now, where each of you are. You have, of course, open mind and heart. And I can tell that you have a kind heart as it relates to not only yourself, but to the world, and you want to make a difference. What and how do you manage your community? Like, who is a part of your community that has poured into you? Pinky, you said that now your family, they see the sort of benefit of education and they, of course, support you. What other aspects of community do you think is important in order to uplift girls, uplift women, to sort of like, so they can have the courage to go forward? So can you guys touch on that?
I think we're all in our early 20s. This is such a transitional age, and an age where we're still learning about ourselves, where we want to be, who we are. And so it's easy to get caught up in a lot of different worlds and environments. So I think recognizing, well, just getting in touch with yourself first is really important to understand the spaces that you want to be in, because I think it's really important to be intentional with who you surround yourself with. And if you don't really know who you are, you can get pulled into a lot of different spaces that may not be the healthiest for you, but also may be the best, most surprising interactions. So I think taking some time alone and finding who you are is really important, and to recognize where you want to be. And so for me, I've sort of narrowed down like the different environments that I surround myself with, which is like for school, I'm part of like certain clubs that really help connect me within the field that I want to go into later on. I have my family that is just super supportive in whatever I want to, be a part of. I have like my close knit of friends that I know are very supportive, that I know I can count on, and I think with friendships, that can be the most complicating things, because there's, within our age, like people come in and out of our lives. So just making sure that you have people surrounding you that have your best intentions at heart, and don't just want to bring you down as well, because I think we're in a world where it can be so easy to get caught up in a lot of different things, and it's not necessarily out there to make you better, if that makes sense.
I agree with what Samara said on like kind of choosing who it gets to come into your circle and who you like make connections with, because like as she said, like there are a lot of people who don't have your best interests at heart, and they kind of like view you as competition. Like I know we talked about at the beginning, like people like women are getting kind of pitted against each other, and then because of that, like there are people who like anything you tell them, like, oh, like you tell them good news, and it's kind of like they're competing with you, and they'll either try to bring you down, like, oh, it's not even that big of a deal, or they'll try to one up you, and then like it causes you to go into like a very draining state, and then it'll push you to like not want to do things, or like it'll be like, oh, like they're right, what I'm doing doesn't matter, like it's literally not all that, I don't even know why I bothered. And it kind of like puts you into that mindset. So I agree that it's very important to surround yourself with a good group of people, like friendship wise, and then spending time with family. There was a point in time where I was like kind of valuing my friends over my family, and then I realized like, oh, like my family is like the people who have been there for me like my entire life, and like we have like our times, but they're like they're my rock solid like base. So like I kind of push through with them with everything. And then the other thing that Samara mentioned was the clubs and extracurriculars that she does at school. I really I love being in yearbook. It doesn't really relate to my field, but it is something that I kind of enjoy because of like the tight-knit community that we have and like how we support each other through building our pages and like uploading photos, and it's just such a positive experience.
Personally, I think that it's been a lot of like, at each stage of my life, I've had different groups of people that played a huge role in who I was, and they were relevant in that moment of life. So I think that we have to first kind of like look at each person or each group that is in our life and embrace it for the moment that they're in. Everyone's kind of serves their purpose. Some serve a long-term purpose, some serve like maybe like incremental purposes. So we have to take each one and like take what they're like trying to bring in. Sometimes it's good to have like positive influences, but it's also good to have like some like, you know, learning experiences as well, because that's how you grow and that's how you learn that this is not what I want, this is not what I want to associate with, this is not the kind of like, you know, person I want to be around. So I think those learning curves are also good, because it teaches you a lot about your own morals, about your own like, you know, upbringing, about your own like self, and it gives you like the confidence that you need about your own footing in the world. I think for me that has been like very humbling, like the people that have played a role, like my family, of course, they've been my constant and the biggest supporters, even though they've challenged me a lot too, but I appreciate the challenges that they have thrown at me, that has turned me into the woman I am today. And my friends, I think with time the groups get smaller and smaller. I think that's also something, you become more selective about the people you want in your life, but at the same time, the when like I guess the friends I did have before, they all also played a very huge role in my life in that moment. So I think taking each person, each group, and each moment and embracing it and like trying to enjoy what they're bringing into it. But at the same time, I think like work colleagues, your teachers, your professors, your mentors, they play such a huge role as well, if you have a close relationship with them. I think like for me, another thing that if friends don't provide me that sort of like comfort, books are another thing that does give me that sort of like, you know, self time. But at the same time, like Samara mentioned, like spending time with yourself so you know exactly what kind of like, you know, people you want to be around and becoming more selective. I think books does that for me, so I really do enjoy that too.
So when I was in my high school, I could see so many girls, they were struggling, even asking about their high school to their parents, like if their parents will allow them for higher education or not. But that wasn't the case with me, because my parents were also educating when I was in the school. Like I was, you know, involved with my family. I was also educating them day by day. So at that time, they were well known about the situation of girls, and that's how they supported me. But I don't know about other girls, how they, you know, involved in their family, how they used to, you know, spend time with their family. So it was like, you know, some girls, they couldn't do that. Like, so when I was coming to US for the first time, and there were so many people, like, you know, who were questioning me to, like, you know, my parents, like, why are you sending, you know, your daughter there? She will never come back or whatever. Like, there were so many things that they were talking about me. But there were only, you know, my parents who believed in me, and they sent me here. So I'm so happy that, you know, I made that kind of connections with my parents. Even they live in that the same society, but I changed their mentality to, like, involve their parents whatever you're doing, so they will support you later. But like in that time, I didn't know that, you know, it will happen, like when I was in school. But today I realized I was doing the right thing to, you know, involve my parents in everything. So yeah, I agree with that.
So it sounds like each of you guys have had support within your communities. So a question that I have for you is, say that you're able to reach a young girl in any part of the world that does not have a community, that does not have a family that supports her towards becoming who she's destined to be, that her society doesn't allow her to write her story like you guys have. She is oppressed, she is belittled. If you had an opportunity to be able to speak to her and you knew that she would be able to hear you, what would you say to her? Because of course, you know, I'm sure you guys are aware there's so many young girls and women that are exactly like that around the world. They're in these spaces that they feel literally like nothing. They feel as though their voices don't matter, their stories don't matter, and they are just existing. and they don't have hope either. They don't have hope because whatever the environment that they're in, they feel as though that's all there is, that there's nothing. And so, all the different things, all the, between war and, the taking away of rights, and all of the things that are sort of happening, how can you, in the spaces where you guys are, and actually in this space, be able to speak to those young girls, those women, and to give them hope? What would you say if you could say something?
I would start off by telling them simply, you can do it and you have the ability to, you're capable of so many things. Because I myself, I was that girl. I did feel like I wasn't capable of anything. I did feel like I can't do anything. Like, what am I doing here? And then Samira came into my life, and she kind of she's the person who pushed me to do the things I'm doing now. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for her pushing me, affirming the capabilities that I already had. It was more so her telling me you already do this, you have these capabilities, rather than developing them in me, because she saw it in me and she just encouraged it more. So I would just encourage them. I would tell them you can do it, you have the capabilities, and you may not see it, you might not be able to see it yourself, but you are already doing so.
I would like to, if I do have that sort of opportunity, first, I really hope that there's not many people who do feel that way, because that's such a lonely feeling. And, you do feel like you're so, you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, and it's really difficult. It's very I think discouraging and isolating in so many ways. So I hope that there's not many people who have that. And I know there are many people, because I've been through that too. I think that even if you have support of your family or different communities, even then sometimes you can feel that sort of isolation. Sometimes you can feel that sort of I don't belong here, or what is happening, or they don't get me, or I don't know what is my purpose. There's a lot of moments of doubt. I think as human beings, we were created with a lot of potential, but at the same time, a lot of doubts as well, which kind of it depends on which balance you're gonna lean on. If you're gonna lean on this side, then obviously it's gonna become so much more difficult for you. But you have this other side that is so much heavier, and there's so much greatness on the other side. I think that if you spend time with yourself and you see yourself, I've always said that we as women, we're our own biggest critics. As a majority of times, the kind of criticisms we have, it's not even real. It's very superficial. It's very in our own head, and we're playing with our own selves, and we're trying to bring ourselves down. So we need to stop that. I think first and foremost, find things that you can love about yourself. The way you can give someone else the grace that you give to your friends or to your family, and you're so considerate, give that to yourself. Because at the end of the day, you are human, and you're only doing as much as you can with what you have. And appreciate how much you're doing, because everyone in this world, regardless of how small of an impact you think you have, you do have an impact. Maybe it's to your community, to your small group of friends, or to your family. You matter. You matter, even if it's a minute, you could see someone on the street, and your one smile at them can make huge difference at that person's life. You can lift someone up without even knowing what kind of impact you're having on people. So you don't have to necessarily have a global impact for you to be relevant. I think that you need to understand that on a daily basis, with really small instances and moments, you have such a huge impact. And I think when we look at ourselves with that sort of light, and when we embrace ourselves with that sort of self-love, there's just so much greatness coming up for all of these girls all over the world.
The thoughts in your head, a lot of the times, they're not true. What we're constantly saying to ourselves, it's fake. And once you recognize that this thought, that thought, it doesn't mean anything, and you're able to push that aside for a moment and sort of just, sit with yourself and move forward, I think that holds a lot of power too, because we're always going to have those negative thoughts, those thoughts that bring us down, that belittle us. But once we realize that, okay, that's a thought, but now what? It doesn't carry that much weight if we don't let it carry that weight. And I think, like you guys both said, just recognizing that it's just about small things. It doesn't matter to make a huge impact on the world. It's just taking it day by day and accomplishing those little things that you want to during the day. So I would just say that, you know, whatever you want to do during that day to make yourself a little happier, to accomplish one more thing in school, or to just get through the day, like write that down and do it. And you'll see how much power you have in your ability to just accomplish those little things, and then make it grow over time, you know, make those accomplishments or make those dreams a little bigger. And soon you'll realize how much strength and how much perseverance you have because you're able to do it. And while that girl might not believe it in that moment, other people see it. I'm sure that, you know, if they ask their mom or just someone or anyone, they'll be able to say, like, I see this in you, I see this in you. And like this, you don't have to sort of become a different person. Like you have so much possibility with it and potential within yourself. And it's just about recognizing it and leaning into it a little bit.
As in our society, like, you know, sometimes people make us feel that we are worth nothing. So I would like to say that you are worth everything. If you can dream of anything, you can do it. Just keep doing it. And today you may not have every facility, but whatever you have today, just utilize it and get on the track and use every, you know, opportunity, whatever you get in life, and you'll see some, you know, yourself somewhere else. Today your society, your parents, your community might not supporting you, but whenever you are on top, people will come to you and ask you, like, so I would say that, like, I can see that thing in myself. Like when I used to go to my school, people were like, you go to, you know, school every day, why don't you take a leave or whatever? You are not going to be a collector if you take a 1-day leave. I was like, doesn't matter, I love to go to school and I will go. So just keep doing whatever you want to do and focus on that one thing that you want to achieve in your life. Don't listen to everyone, like just do, you know, what you have decided in your life to do in future. So yeah, that is it.
Your stories, of course, you are the author of your stories, and what you've been able to share and what other people will be able to see that I've posted, those are aspects of your story that you've shared today. Now, of course, you know that there's so much more about each of you, as we're learning right now during this live. There's so much more to your stories, and I guess I would say, what advice would you give to someone who feels as though, like, you know, I don't really know sort of what my story is, or even what my purpose is, or how I can even like start even just to fill out a mandala. You know, I don't even know exactly who I am, or no one's filled me up enough so I can be able to sort of like be the author of my own story, and they don't maybe even feel validated to do so. So how can you encourage someone as they're in those spaces to be able to start sort of, you know, having an idea as far as, okay, this is what I'm wanting to sort of be, because maybe they've never given an opportunity to even use their voice to speak who they want to be at all.
So I think that, again, those are also, like we've mentioned before, those are like thoughts that we hold ourselves back. I think that like sometimes we forget that like we're always comparing ourselves to other people and what they have achieved and what they have accomplished, and using that like as a benchmark for ourselves as well. And if we see like according to them, oh, they've done this and they've done this and they've done this and they've done this, you know, and like compared to that, we're like, oh, but I've done nothing. It's so minuscule, like what I've done in comparison to that. But there's like so many people in the world, so many people feel the same way as you do, you know, and they probably feel like, oh my god, I'm not leaving as much of an impact as I think I am, you know, worthy of, or I could. So I think it's important that like you stop holding yourself back and stop like trying to like, you know, discount what you have achieved and what you have done, regardless of how small or big it is. If that was what you were given, and if that is what you have achieved, and if that is how much you could have, then that is how much you have, you know. And I think just even existing in this world where there's so much toxicity and there's so much happening, and there's just like so many people pulling us back, and just so many different things that are like constantly like, you know, holding our hearts heavy, for us to even exist in this kind of world where there's just so much happening on a daily basis, and not many good things, many bad things. So I think even that is such a big accomplishment, to not give up, and to fight on a daily basis, and to live for a purpose, If you have achieved that purpose or not, that's a whole different story. But if you're even here right now in this moment, you have accomplished enough, in my opinion, at least. You existing is more than enough. And what you do after that, that's additional, I think icing on top, but you just being here, that's the cake. So I think that's the starting point for sure.
For that, I would say go and try new things. Like, let's say I did not know that I could do ever, do painting and all that. But once I started doing it, I got to know that, oh, I can do painting. So I would say just go, go and experience everything. And you will realize that how many, things that you can do, how many abilities and talents you got. So I think, just go explore, try new things, meet new people and learn from them, and go ahead.
Agree with what Pinky said about going to try new things and just exploring. Like I myself as a kid, I kind of like I couldn't stick to a single hobby. Like every other month, every other year, it was a different hobby. I went through knitting, painting, drawing. I can't remember because there were so many. Like I just went through everything possible, sewing. So I agree, like try everything you possibly can try. Like go around, like don't limit yourself, and you will find something you like, or you'll find out you don't like something. And then the other thing is you can have multiple interests, you can have multiple hobbies. Like currently I'm kind of deciding my major, and I am also all over the place with that. Like I kind of wanted to go into business, but I also wanted to be in the medical field. And I finally like came to an agreement of being in healthcare management and also doubling in biology. So I think like what Pinky said, try everything, explore, and don't limit yourself.
For me, like even doing or completing the mandala, it was hard to fill out, and I do so much, and it was hard to find those like my core values and just who I embody as a person, which says a lot. You can be doing and trying a bunch of new things but still not know who you are and how you're portrayed to others. And so I think just what helped me was just writing down how I thought of myself in the eyes of like my mom. Does that make sense? Like I didn't look at it as just like me, because I think that, like we've mentioned before, we think less of ourselves so naturally, which is not right. So when you think of yourself in the eyes of others, it can open up this new thing of like, oh, they've said this about me, I guess that's true. And I think when I viewed it that way, I was so many things came to me a lot easier. And I just love the point of saying that when you're by simply being who you are, that is enough. And by just, you don't even have to be writing about or talking about like who you want to be in this world, but just who you are in this current moment. And it doesn't require, you doing X, Y, and Z, but simply like being. And I think that holds a lot of power too.
Definitely love what Samara said about thinking of yourself in the eyes of others. I think that's something like I tell my friends a lot. Like I was like, you don't see yourself the way others do, because it's so true. Like I think I relate this a lot to like photos, because like at my age, like we love to like pick out each other's Instagram photos for each other, and like I might think a photo of my friend is nice and she hates it, and it's just like you don't see yourself the way I do. And I love that you mentioned that.
We're celebrating International Women's Day today, and how we view ourselves, what our capabilities are. How is social media and technology, is it impacting in a positive way or in a negative way with regard to your generation, and how do you feel about that?
There's positive aspects and there are negative aspects. It does depend a lot on what you expose yourself to and what you kind of like take in. Like previously, like I'd say like in the past few months, like maybe like a year ago, I would take in a lot of content that was kind of just like modeling or like kind of like superficial contents. And then now like I've been like really into like kind of more spiritual, I would say, or like religious content that's just like self-help, or like how can you improve yourself, like like change your thought process, do these steps to like improve yourself, like a lot of that now. So it's like changed and become more positive for me. So I think it really just depends like what kind of content you consume for the most part.
Yeah, what you consume is really important on the daily basis. I think I try to focus my page more on like positivity, just like my friends, my family, and also like the person that I want to be, in terms of like mindset and stuff like that. I think I definitely don't like how much time I spend on social media, no matter if it's positive or not. I think that being in the present moment is really important, and not naturally picking up your phone every 5 seconds is something that I want to do and make a habit. So that's the one thing, like social media is built to make you sort of addicted to the platform. So I think just ensuring that you're putting the tools in place to not have it be your whole life and have it control you, even if it is like helpful and positive.
Social media is a kind of exposure, like we get to know everything, like so many things about world, like what's happening all around the world, what people think about a certain topic, and you can see your view, and you can also give your view according like on those things. So you can like you get the freedom of speech, like you can say whatever you want to say, you can present your opinion about certain things. But at the same time, there are some like people who don't even have they are not educated, still they are on social media and they are spreading wrong things, and which is not right. They are spreading that through social media. So I think like this youth is also impacted by all those things, like negativity and all that. But there are also good things that are like important to know. So I would say it's like pros and cons both using social media.
Personally, I think social media, it really matters on like what kind of like relationship you have with yourself as well, and how you would like use social media in that moment of your life. I think like if you're not feeling as like positive about yourself, you tend to use social media and you tend to focus on the negative aspects of social media and how that makes you feel about yourself. But if you're in a better place where you're like confident, like you have a strong foundation. I don't think anyone has fully of a strong of a foundation, but close enough, of a foundation where you know what you're worth of. And like, I think then the way you use social media, like despite whatever is coming to you, necessarily you can screen it, like you're better at screening like what kind of like information matters and what kind of information really allowed to like take a toll on you and on your body. But I think at the end of the day, yeah, I do see that there's a huge like shift from like people used to go outside and have fun and like meet up and that sort of like active lifestyle, versus now it's becoming more passive and everyone's like on their bed and on their phone, and even like if they're meeting people, like it's just consumes our whole lifestyle now. And I think that's a little bit of a huge problem. And slowly, with more technology development, you're seeing that it's coming to that sort of shift. So we need to find ways to kind of like Samara said, to like, control ourselves, even if there's so much like, leaning towards it. But at the same time, I think we need to like kind of like hold back a little bit. Otherwise, we're going to be so consumed into it and not know how to get out of it. And then that's another rabbit hole that you don't want to get into.
This has been so inspiring, but as we wrap up, I would love for each of you, just briefly, to be able to share what your hope is based on what your perspective is as we sort of start out the conversation. Harir, with regard to the rights of girls in Afghanistan, Pinky, those young girls and women who are still in Anupshare near Pradada Padadi, and Hajar, as you see more young women who are maybe thinking about going into the sorority and being able to sort of be proud as far as to be able to wear their hijabs. And then Samara, as you see the importance of being able to do more preventative as far as healthcare. So hopefully I wrapped all of that up, but I would love for you guys to sort of just share just a brief hope that if you could speak it, it would actually be. Like, what is your dream that if I could be able to impact this to happening in the future, then I would be so happy. So can you share that as a last note before we wrap up?
Love for more chapters to open up around like the country, for girls to take the initiative to create that space for themselves, because we do not have chapters at every so that is kind of like something they can take initiative and open a chapter and kind of lead it and work on, being that representation in whatever university they may attend. And also, I personally would love to break into male dominated spaces. I am going into the medical field in the future, I believe. Those are my current plans. They might change, but I would also like want to, for myself personally, just feel comfortable breaking into those spaces and going into that field.
I want to say that I hope for people to be their own health advocate. I think it would be a lot to say, to change the healthcare system right now. So I think that if we all take initiative to learn about who we are as people, as in terms of how to take care of ourselves, what to do to prevent these different health issues, to learn about our health history with our family, and just to take initiative accordingly, I think that would do so much more for all of us as a community.
My heart is still very heavy with what's been happening in Afghanistan and continues to happen on a daily basis. It's been 570 days that girls cannot go to like school from secondary, like, and onwards. And just like with universities banned, civil societies are shutting down. So I see that like there's like, doors are shutting on a daily basis at the face of women. I just really hope that like we, the international and the global world, can continue remembering Afghanistan and not forgetting with each other crisis that's coming up. I think that people start to like get more detached emotionally. But at the same time, I really do hope that I see a world where Afghan women do get to enjoy their privileges and their rights, and all women, not just Afghan, but like right now, I feel especially for Afghan and Iranian women, because like I see what is happening, and what is happening is just so beyond imaginable, especially in the time and age we're living in. So to not have access to such fundamental rights is beyond my imagination. But I really hope that I get to see that like they take charge and they, gain back their rights, and they can prevail their education and everything, and all smooth sailing from then onwards.
So I hope to see more Pinkies like me sharing their story and, seeing the world and doing whatever they want to do and making their own decision and becoming, independent in their life. And I hope they don't have to get permission for whatever they want to do in their life, and changing their community and their mentality towards girls and girl education. So yeah, I hope everything, like, it's a long way, but like it will take time, but it will change one day. So I hope so.
Well, as we come to an end, I want to let each of you guys know I'm so very proud of each of you in the spaces that you're in. I know that you will continue to be authors of your own stories, and you will inspire so many other girls and actually grown women just like me to be able to write our stories, because there's so many, even women that are my age around the world who haven't even written their stories the way you guys have. I want to encourage you guys to continue the work that you're doing, to know that your voice matters and that you're not alone, that we are a sisterhood. You can be able to reach out to me at any point in time to offer any advice and support, and just to continually encourage you. I want you to know that I want to be a part of your community in whatever way that I can. And I just want to thank you for coming and being authentically yourselves and sharing your story with the world. And I cannot wait to see all the amazing things that you guys are going to do. And just want to thank you for just being exactly who you are.